Welcome to Financial Education TV. What if I told you that almost every country on Earth is in debt? The United States, China, Japan, Nigeria, the United Kingdom, France, India, even some of the richest nations in the world owe trillions of dollars. But here's the strange part. If almost every country owes money, then who exactly are they owing? And how can the entire world survive on debt? Today, we're going to uncover one of the biggest mysteries in economics. By the end of this video, you'll understand why governments borrow money, who they borrow from, why debt keeps increasing, and whether the world's financial system can survive forever. Let's begin. First, we need to understand something important. Debt is not automatically bad for a country. In fact, modern governments are designed to use debt. Think about it. Governments spend enormous amounts of money every single year. They build roads, airports, schools, hospitals, electricity projects, railways, military systems, and welfare programs. But taxes alone are usually not enough to pay for everything. So governments borrow money. Just like businesses take loans to grow, governments also borrow to expand their economies. The idea is simple. Borrow money today. Grow the economy tomorrow. Pay the debt gradually over time. Now here's where things become interesting. Many countries have been in debt for generations. The United States has carried debt for more than 200 years. Japan's national debt is even larger than its entire economy. And many developing countries spend billions every year just paying interest on old loans. So naturally, people ask the big question, who is lending all this money? Well, countries borrow from four major groups. The first group is citizens and investors. Governments borrow money mainly through something called bonds. A bond is basically an IOU.
The government says, lend us money today and we'll pay you back later with interest. People, banks, pension funds, and investment companies buy these bonds because they are considered relatively safe investments. So in many cases, governments actually owe money to their own citizens. The second group is other countries. Yes, countries lend money to each other. For example, China owns a large amount of United States government debt. Japan also owns huge amounts of U.S. Treasury bonds. Why? Because countries with extra money often invest in strong economies like the United States. This is why you sometimes hear people say, America owes China trillions of dollars. What they really mean is China bought large amounts of U.S. government bonds. The third group is banks and financial institutions. Commercial banks buy government debt because it is considered safer than many private investments. Governments need financing and banks need stable investments, so they depend on each other. The fourth group is international organizations. Institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank lend money to countries, especially during economic crises. These loans are often used for infrastructure, emergency funding, or stabilizing weak economies. But these loans usually come with conditions. Countries may be required to increase taxes, reduce spending, or remove subsidies. And this is why international loans sometimes become politically controversial. Now let's talk about how governments actually borrow money. Suppose a government needs $100 billion. Instead of printing money immediately, it issues bonds. Investors buy those bonds, and in return, the government promises to repay the money later with interest. Now here's something very important. Governments usually do not pay off all debt at once. Instead, they refinance debt. This means they borrow new money to replace old debt. At first, this sounds dangerous. But surprisingly, this is normal in modern economics. The system works as long as investors still trust the government, as long as the economy continues growing, and as long as inflation stays under control. But when confidence disappears, things become dangerous very quickly. If investors fear that a country cannot repay its debt, interest rates rise. Borrowing becomes more expensive, and debt can spiral out of control. This has happened in countries like Greece, Argentina, and Venezuela. Debt itself is not always the real problem. Loss of confidence is. Now, at this point, many people ask an important question. If governments control money, why don't they just print more money and erase the debt? The answer is inflation. When too much money is created too quickly, the value of money falls. Prices rise. Food becomes more expensive. Fuel becomes more expensive. Rent increases. And salaries lose value. In extreme cases, people can lose trust in the currency itself. This happened in Zimbabwe and Venezuela. In some periods, inflation became so severe that people needed bags of cash just to buy basic goods. So governments try to balance three things carefully: economic growth, inflation, and debt management. And this is where central banks enter the picture. A central bank is the institution that manages a country's money system. Examples include the Federal Reserve in the United States, the European Central Bank, and the Central Bank of Nigeria. Central banks control interest rates, manage inflation, and influence how much money circulates in the economy. Now here's where things become fascinating. Sometimes central banks actually buy government debt themselves. During major crises like the 2008 financial crash and the COVID-19 pandemic, central banks around the world purchased enormous amounts of government bonds. This process is called quantitative easing. The central bank creates money digitally and uses it to buy government debt. This helps keep interest rates low and supports the economy during difficult periods. But critics argue that excessive money creation can create long-term inflation and weaken currencies over time. And this leads to one of the biggest truths about the modern economy. Most modern money is actually connected to debt. This is called sovereign default, and it can be devastating. When countries default, investors panic. Currencies lose value. Inflation rises. Foreign investment disappears. And unemployment often increases sharply. Governments may be forced to cut spending, increase taxes, or sell national assets. In severe cases, entire economies can collapse in a crisis. We saw this happen in Greece after the 2008 financial crisis. The government struggled to repay its obligations, and international lenders demanded strict economic reforms in exchange for financial assistance. The result included unemployment, protests, and major economic hardship. Now, many people wonder why the United States can continue borrowing trillions of dollars without collapsing. The answer is global trust. The US dollar is the world's primary reserve currency. Countries use dollars for international trade, oil transactions, banking, and foreign reserves. Because of this, there's enormous demand for US dollars and US government bonds. This gives the United States extraordinary financial flexibility compared to most countries. But even powerful economies are not completely immune to debt risks. No system can expand forever without consequences. And this brings us to the final question. Can countries ever become completely debt-free? Technically, yes. But in reality, most modern economies choose not to, because debt can actually help economies grow when used responsibly. Debt can fund infrastructure, improve productivity, create jobs, and expand industries. The real issue is not whether debt exists. The real issue is whether the economy grows fast enough to support that debt. And this is why economists often compare debt to GDP, which represents the size of a country's economy. A strong economy can usually handle larger debt. A weak economy struggles much more easily. So the global financial system ultimately runs on one thing: trust. Trust that governments will repay their obligations. Trust that currencies will hold value. Trust that banks will remain stable. And trust that economies will continue growing into the future. Debt itself is not automatically evil, but irresponsible debt can become extremely dangerous. And understanding this changes how you see inflation, banking, taxes, interest rates, and the entire modern economy. So the next time someone asks, why is every country in debt? You'll understand the deeper answer. Countries borrow because modern economies are built on credit, investment, and growth. And they owe money to citizens, investors, banks, foreign governments, and international institutions. The system is complex. But once you understand debt, you begin to understand how the modern world truly operates. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to Financial Education TV. Like the video, share it with someone interested in economics, and comment below. Do you think the global debt system is sustainable? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.